Welcome to Hot Topics for March with League of Women Voters in Davidson County. Today, we're going to be having a talk about the Tennessee Sierra Club solid waste, the Tennessee Waste Reduction and Recycling Act. And that will be presented by Dan Firth, who is the chairman of the Tennessee chapter of the Sierra Club Solid Waste and Mining Committee. Over the past years, Dan has been involved with many nonprofits around the issues of solid waste, water quality, and coal mining. And currently he's teaching at East Tennessee State University. He is the organizer of the coalition that has put together and authored the Tennessee Waste Reduction and Recycling Act. Additionally, he wants everyone to know, and I have seen it, it's absolutely wonderful. He builds beautiful bridges on the Appalachian Trail in Northeast Tennessee. So with that, and with a little bit of, sort of a rough start, Dan, I hand it over to you.
Thank you, Karen. Today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the Tennessee Waste Reduction and Recycling Act. Otherwise known, we talk about as TWRRA. This bill has been introduced this session into both the House and the Senate, and has bill numbers. So with that, I would like to go on and say that we have a trash problem. Our trash is growing, and it does not disappear. Our trash goes, whether we know it or not, whether we even think about it or not, our trash goes into landfills. It could be incinerated, could be reused, recycled, and it's often dumped as litter. All of these disposal means have significant costs and impacts on our community, whether it be environmental or social or cost, or whatever. We all pay for disposal of trash, whether we think about it or not. Most of our trash is going into landfills in Tennessee. Landfills fill up. Landfills pollute the air, the land, and the water. And landfills stink. And nobody wants to live near new landfills, or old landfills for that matter. And landfills just do not go away. They've got to be managed in one form or another pretty much forever. We're losing valuable materials into our landfills. Packaging materials make up a significant amount of the trash that we throw away. We have pollution problems. The Tennessee River has been determined to be one of the most polluted rivers in the world for microplastics. And we in Tennessee do not recycle very much. Recently, we've been ranked just 47th out of 50, with just 7% of our common container materials being recycled. That's not very good, and it causes all kinds of problems. And challenges in terms of recycling are that our recycling programs are burdened by high costs. You all know that we're very limited in the materials that are actually being collected. Only the most economically viable materials are collected, typically cardboards and paper, tin, aluminum, and those kind of things. Many programs do not even collect plastic materials for the past several years since the China sword policies went into place. Across Tennessee, recycling locations are closing. Curbside collection is often halted. In fact, my area, we no longer have curbside collection for recyclables, and we do not recycle plastics at all in my town. But many programs want to recycle more, but there are significant challenges. We surveyed a number of municipal and county recycling programs, and they told us that they need workers, infrastructure, money, and stable markets in order to be effective. But we must reduce the amount of trash that is being landfilled and incinerated. And there are plenty of Tennessee businesses that want those recoverable feedstock packaging materials as feedstocks. And so packaging materials is a good place to start in terms of reducing our waste, the materials that we're disposing. Probably all of us since we were little kids have been taught to reuse, reduce, reuse, and recycle. Many of us, that's ingrained into our behaviors, but it's hard. It's hard to know which materials are recyclable. It's hard to know, we have little control over what packaging in that we get. So our current approach is not working. As consumers, we have little or no ability to influence the amount or types of packaging that we receive with purchased goods. If you need a product, you go to buy it. You really have no way to know what packaging you're going to get other than the outside box or bag or something like that. But there's often lots of packaging that's internal that you don't see. And it may be one particular product that you need and you have no choice and you're stuck with whatever packaging you get. Only the companies, those producers that are selling their products into Tennessee have control over both the type and the amount of packaging that is associated with their products. And so it is imperative that we engage those producers in helping us solve this problem. Well, extended producer responsibility, often called EPR, is a set of policies that do engage those producers in helping reduce and redesign packaging to either be more recyclable or reusable. And it incentivizes them and the brand owners to make those decisions. And it helps create markets for those recyclable products. In fact, EPR has been implemented across the world in a number of countries, and now in a number of states have also introduced EPR for a number of different things, including paints, packaging, carpets, mattresses, pharmaceuticals, and mercury, and other things like that. So EPR is not a new program. It's been tested, it's established. So the TWRRA implements EPR for packaging in Tennessee. The objectives here of this bill are to support the unique requirements of Tennessee. Tennessee has a wide variety of different means. Sometimes cities and counties actually run the recycling programs. In other cases, they're contracted out. This bill is agnostic in terms of how that happens, and it seeks to support all the different ways that are occurring in Tennessee. Number one, a reduction in packaging is a primary objective of the bill. Reduction has the lowest cost overall. If you reduce the amount of packaging, you don't have to deal with the disposal. It doesn't go to a landfill. It doesn't get incinerated. It doesn't even take the energy to recycle it. An objective is to reduce the amount of litter, to incentivize those materials going back and being recycled instead of being tossed to the side of the road or in ravines or gullies or fields across Tennessee. It encourages designs for packaging in order to enable them to be more readily recyclable. It incentivizes the development of new markets and the circular economy across Tennessee. And it shifts the financial burden from the taxpayers to the producers. and thus engages those producers to be responsible for packaging end of life. When they have responsibility for paying for that disposal, for the recycling, they have an incentive to reduce the amount of packaging that they use. They have incentives to redesign those packages so that they can be more readily and more effectively recycled. So engaging producers is a foundation of this bill. All types of packaging are covered by this bill, whether it's recyclable or not. It covers cardboard, paper, plastic, glass, aluminum, metal, whatever types of packaging is used in products that are sold into Tennessee. It covers the primary packaging. And the primary packaging is the packaging that is in direct contact with the product. So for example, if it's a cereal box and there's a bag inside the box that contains the cereal, that plastic bag is the primary packaging. The secondary packaging, which is the packaging that surrounds the primary packaging, whether it's been bundled or boxed or whatever. And then finally, tertiary packaging, the boxes that are used to ship products and that. So the Amazon boxes and all those kinds of things. The bill covers service packaging, so the carry-out bags, bulk good bags, take-out home delivery service packaging. All of those types of single-use packaging. It defines recycling being the recovery of valuable materials to make new products. But recycling does not include energy recovery or energy generation by means of combustion. So incineration or waste energy is not considered as recycling, or the production of fuel from the packaging. Landfill uses, disposal or discarded materials or use as a cover are not considered recycling or reuse. It expands the packaging that will be recycled. It ensures that consistency across the state. Right now, it's hard to know exactly what packaging is recyclable because it varies from town to town, city to county, and that. It's hard to know whether within types of packaging, for example, drink bottles are more recyclable than the clamshells. If the bill seeks to standardize the recyclability and the definition of recyclable, and then establish uniform sets of materials that are collected across the state. It seeks to provide access to all Tennesseans, whether they live in single or multifamily residences, and provide equivalent access to recycling. But basically the way that the bill works is that, and the way that most all EPR bills and acts work, is that there is a producer responsibility organization that is established. That producer responsibility organization, or PRO, is made up of the companies that sell products into Tennessee. The PRO is responsible for developing a 5-year plan that implements the recycling, that it implements performance goals. For example, performance goals in terms of how much recyclables are collected, how much post-consumer recycle content is required in packaging, how infrastructure across Tennessee for recycling and reuse will be implemented and paid for, how litter remediation and the fee structure. Feeding into that 5-year plan is a needs assessment that assesses the recycling and the reuse systems and programs that are already established in Tennessee, and where there are gaps. And finally, the PRO is responsible for reporting on how the program is working. The PRO is overseen by the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, along with an advisory board that is established by folks who represent all regions of Tennessee. It represents packaging folks who are not members of the PRO, and it also includes members in the recycling industry and things like that, to provide that expertise in order to provide input and consulting for the PRO into the needs assessment, and the 5-year plan, and the objectives and things like that. A minimum recyclables list will be established that defines the minimum materials that have to be collected across the state in order to participate in the program and to be reimbursed. That minimum recyclable list will include both the easy to recycle materials and some of the harder to recycle materials. The PRO will be responsible for implementing packaging reduction and achieving goals. The PRO will then be also responsible for paying 100% of reasonable costs for recycling services across the state. So counties and municipalities will be able to apply to the PRO for reimbursement of their costs of recycling, and therefore providing stability to those programs. And those costs will cover both reuse, collection, transportation, and then the processing, the sorting of materials. The bill looks out for small businesses. We don't want to be a burden on those small businesses. Most of the packaging comes from the large companies. And that the smaller companies, as a result of changes resulting through redesign and materials and recyclability, will benefit. But we don't want them to be directly burdened by the fees and that necessary for operating the PRO. So companies that have less than $1 million in revenues will be exempt, or those that produce only small amounts of packaging, less than 1 ton of packaging, will be exempt from the requirements. But they will also benefit by the availability of markets and the availability of recyclability, and they will be influenced by those things that are the packaging that is available for them to purchase. We believe that the TWRRA will benefit businesses across Tennessee by supporting a circular economy. The act will help develop markets for collected materials, which will ultimately result in expanded recyclability and more materials being collected. It will provide those feedstocks of those recovered materials, and it will ensure stability of supply so that companies who want to use those materials can be assured that those materials will be available. And transparency is critical to any type of program like this. Transparency builds accountability. Having confidence that materials are actually being recycled. Many of us wonder whether those materials that we actually put into the recycle bin, are they actually recycled, or do they just go to the landfill? We don't know. That results in many people just saying, why bother? So knowing where those materials go will help encourage recycling across Tennessee. So the PRO will be required to report annually on the amounts and dispositions of those collected materials. So we will know whether they're being recycled or they're going to the landfill or other disposal means. We'll know how much of those materials are being exported out of Tennessee and what their disposition is. We don't want materials just to be collected under the guise of recycling and then go out of state and be burned for fuel or energy. They'll report on the total cost of the program, the infrastructure investments, and the actions that they do to reduce and reuse packaging, and the actions that are taken to reduce litter. What will a program like this cost? Well, the PRO will bear 100% of the reasonable costs for the program. Once it's implemented, there'll be some small startup costs, but once it's implemented, the cost to the state for administration will be zero. Counties and municipalities will pay zero for their recycling of packaging materials. Recycling and reuse of packaging materials will be free to the consumers. This will enable local governments who are currently paying for recycling services to reallocate or reduce their taxes. Now, a very valid question is, well, will I pay more? Well, so far, producer responsibility programs are in place in over 40 countries and provinces, and some of them have been in place for decades. So there is data out there. So far, there is no evidence that producer responsibility programs lead to increase in consumer prices. In fact, producers, they have control. They can choose how much and what materials they use to produce their packaging. They have a lever to control those costs by designing better packaging. How long will this program take to implement? Well, in the first year, the PRO will be established, and their PROs are being established across the country. And so there's experience and knowledge that is being built as we speak. The advisory board will be formed within the first year. There are examples of advisory boards being formed across the states. And so we have experience, there's knowledge and experience out there that we can build upon. The needs assessment will be within the first 2 years. And then within the third year, the PRO will have to implement their plan. So overall, the time to implement will take a couple years, but it's not forever. Why not Tennessee? Okay, I mean, 33 other states have some type of EPR covering products, 160 different products. 40 countries and four states have EPR for packaging. A number of states are in the process of introducing and will likely pass EPR for packaging in the United States this year. Companies are currently paying for recycling in other countries and other states. Companies know how to do this. They're doing it in other states. They're doing it in other countries. They can do it in Tennessee. Right now, we have developed a bill framework. We've drafted the bill, and that bill has been filed in Tennessee. We have sponsors of Heidi Campbell and Tori Harris. So right now we're at the stage of building support. We're seeking support from businesses, local governments, community members, and organizations. These bills have never passed in a single year. And in fact, here in Tennessee this year, we're seeing the opposition to this bill. So this bill will likely is not going to pass this year, but we hope to carry it on to the next year and to work with the communities and build a coalition to support this bill and to help the legislators see how valuable this bill will be for Tennessee. In writing this bill, we have sought input from stakeholders, from community members, counties and municipalities, the recycling industry, regulators, solid waste professionals, and trade organizations. So we believe that this bill is a valid bill and it is a workable bill for Tennessee. I'm sure that Karen will put into the chat actual links to our bill and our fact sheet. And at this point, I guess I'll like to answer any questions that people have.
Thank you, Dan. I will work on putting that in the chat and move forward with that. So I do have a question. Can you give me us an idea about how this will interact with some of the communities that have more robust recycling systems already, and how this helps those as well as others? Do you have a sense of that?
There will be no requirement for counties and municipalities that have robust recycling already. They will be supported. Even those counties and municipalities that have robust programs suffer from instability in the markets, from fluctuations in the price of recycled materials. And so the bill will help them bring stability to these communities. It may also enable them to expand the materials that they are actually collecting and can economically recycle. Because of developing new markets will drive the collection of new materials. If infrastructure is needed in order to manage and collect and process those recyclables beyond what they have the capacity for, so as more materials are collected and recycled, the costs of those infrastructure will be borne by the PROs. The smaller counties and municipalities, those that don't have robust recycling programs, and in fact, some of those small counties have very robust recycling programs, and collect a greater variety of materials than some of the cities. I know Granger County collects plastics, whereas Kingsport does not. But those smaller counties that need that infrastructure in order to operate their programs effectively, efficiently, and safely will have greater access to that funding for that infrastructure.
That's really interesting. I assume the other issue that has plagued some of the people here locally, they have asked me many times to bring in, like, what can I recycle? What can I recycle? Is this recyclable? Is that not recyclable? And I think you mentioned that one of the things that would happen is creating a statewide consistency about what can and cannot be recycled. Is that correct? That
is correct.
Yeah. So I wouldn't have to continually look at numbers and figure out whether it's bigger or smaller at the, it would be
right. And because the producers will be incentivized to collect more materials, they'll be the ability for them to respond will be by simplifying the materials that are collected. So designing product packaging that is recyclable. So you're not mixing different products, that they're choosing materials that are actually recyclable. And that should result in a simplification and enable the consumer to know what is being recycled, what is recyclable, what can they put in their bin, and minimize and reduce the amount of wish cycling that we all seem to try and do.
Oh, I like that, wish cycling. So a couple of questions. One, Bobby has raised her hand. And so Bobby, would you like to ask a question?
A kind of more of a comment, because I went with Dan to the Granger County, visited the mayor and the solid waste manager. And I also have a personal friendship with the solid waste manager. And one of the things is that solid waste is handled county by county by county. And so that's why our solid waste manager in Granger can recycle the 1 and 2 plastics, because he personally searches for a buyer. And also counties have to request grant monies from TDEC to get, like, for example, the thing that crushes it all into a square package so that it can be transported. And so that's going to be a big hurdle that has to be overcome. And on Dan's presentation, he has a framework for that, but that's going to take a while to implement because it's very different at the moment.
Dan, do you have?
Yeah, and that's where the needs assessment comes in, is ensuring that each county and each municipality is looked at individually as to what their needs are, what their capabilities are, and providing those resources where they're needed in order to be able to in order to be able to handle the minimum, those materials that are deemed to be minimal, the minimals recyclables list.
We have a question in the chat, and it says, thanks, Dan, for a very clear overview. Can you describe how EPR has played out in other earlier adopting states? For example, have businesses benefited as proposed by recovering raw materials for future production?
Right now, there are no state has fully implemented EPR for packaging. There are 4 states, Maine, Oregon, California, and Colorado are in the process, have passed it and are in the process of implementing it. There is evidence, again, there are lots of brands that are seeing that EPR is the future, and they're joining the PROs in these states. They are making decisions that they want more recyclable content in their packaging, but they can't get the amount of material that they want. And they see EPR as being a viable means for them to get that materials. And a lot of that is coming now in the plastics from plastic packaging. But even the businesses that are using cardboard and want recycled cardboard. In Kingsport, we have a company called Domtar that just rebuilt their whole facility to use recycled cardboard to make new cardboard. And they need that. I mean, this is a large facility. They need the material. And they're not the only ones. There are industries across the Tennessee and nearby states who want materials to be able to include in their products. And they recognize that the current system is not working.
Right. And I mean, right now, it would seem that much of the material that you're talking about, whether it's cardboard or plastic or other things, are going directly into landfills, and they could be going instead into the supply for some of these companies that we already have. So that makes sense.
Right. And new companies are, if they're assured that there's supply, new companies will form.
Right. So there was a question about, could you explain how the fluctuation of prices for certain kinds of recyclables affects municipalities currently? Do you have a kind of a general take on what happens to municipalities when they try to deal with the current world of pricing?
Right now, yeah, sure. I mean, right now, oftentimes when material cost prices are high, it's very easy for municipalities to sell the material that they collect. They don't have to spend a lot of time searching out higher prices and things like that. They can cover their costs. When prices are low, they either have to hold material until those prices come back up, or their costs are not covered. And a big part of those costs is transportation. And particularly when those materials are first collected, when they're the lowest density, when they collected at your curbside, when those bottles look like bottles and they're mostly air. Okay, and they're very light, but they take up a lot of space. Transportation costs are high. And so you have to have a short distance between the collection and the material recovery facility, or the MRF, that does the sorting and the compression. And if the transportation costs are high and the material prices are low, then it's not economical for counties and municipalities to collect those materials. And that's what's happening in Kingsport here, is that they deem that the transportation costs are too high for them to effectively collect and transport those plastics to be recycled. And as a result, they've chosen to not collect them. And in fact, they've chosen to not collect materials in curbside, and are dependent solely upon convenience centers for the cardboard, paper, and those kinds of materials.
So can you assume then that in Kingsport, people are just throwing it almost all in the trash, right? So it's just going to the landfill.
Oh, right. Yeah. And they've essentially, the barrier is higher to taking it to a convenience center than it is putting it out at the curb. And people are more likely to put things into their trash than they are to take it to the convenience center.
Sure. Go ahead, Bobby.
Yeah, one of the things we learned over there in Granger County, all around the counties that are near us, we've been collecting glass in one person's barn, so that we can make a every 3-month trip into Knoxville, and there is a glass recycling at their convenience center right across the street from the zoo. But we learned that Granger County is submitting a grant to TDEC to get a glass crusher of their own. So that's an example of what I was talking about before, where now counties have to take an initiative. Individual counties and municipalities have to take an initiative to recycle some new product that had not been recycled, or where the recycling had been cut off. Kingsport used to have a place where glass could be recycled, and it went to a place in Kingsport where they crushed the glass, and then that went away. So this act, the fact that it standardizes things, that's going to be one of the big things. And then the other is the reduction. Just again, it's not a question, it's a comment.
I love your comments, Bobby. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Karen.
There is a question that is a little bit more direct in the chat, and let's go for it. So the question is, it seems like we possibly have been led astray by some industry for a while, and is there a way to hold the industry accountable for having been duped into recyclability?
Yeah, I mean, certainly companies and that try to externalize or put on somebody else as much of their costs as they possibly can.
I think that's called negative externalities. And we had
right. And as long as they're allowed to do that, they will, because that incentivizes them, because they can claim those as not being their costs. So they look at that as a way to reduce those costs. And the burden here in the case with recycling, they put the complete burden of that on the taxpayers, on the consumers. And while it may be difficult to go back and reclaim some of that cost because of the failures, an EPR approach does bring those costs and puts them on their bottom line. And the goal there is that having those additional costs incentivizes them to do in an effective and efficient manner and make them partners in solving these problems.
I appreciate that. So the other question is, what is keeping the bill from being passed? And is there what sorts of things can be done to move it forward so that we can ensure that either what the league can do or what others can do to help this thing move forward?
Right now, the barrier is the industries in Tennessee, at least some of them. The Chamber of Commerce has come out in opposition to this bill, as they have in many other states across the country. States as like Colorado had spent time working with the chamber and working with the businesses to overcome their resistance to the bill. And that is one of the keys in that. And so we don't have time in this sitting of the legislature in order to overcome this, because this is a complicated bill. It's not an easy bill. You're not going to just sit down in one setting and talk it through and get that opposition to go away. It's going to take time. It's going to take people. You can look at it, there being three legs to the stool. We have to get businesses behind it. And there are many businesses that are getting behind it. We have businesses who are building their business plans around the circular economy. We have to have the solid waste and the counties and municipalities behind it. So that's one place, is to reach out to your counties, your cities who are doing the recycling, the solid waste boards, and talk to them about, hey, we want more recycling. We think that the TWRRA is a good way to go about doing that. The more they hear about it, the more likely they are to support it. When we surveyed them, nobody was opposed to it if they knew what EPR was, but lots didn't. 2/3 did not really know what EPR was. And then finally, there's the community. And we need to build community support. But this bill is not going to pass by just the Sierra Club sponsoring it as a bill. We're going to have to put together a real live coalition of partners in that. And so in a lot of respects, this year was our opportunity to put this bill out there to say, hey, we've got a viable bill. We think it's worthy of consideration. And we're not going to go away. We're going to be back. We recognize that there's opposition. We knew that there was opposition that was going to come out. And we wanted to meet that opposition and be able to have those discussions. And we believe that if we have those discussions, we can bring them around. But it's going to take time. And
Bobby?
so over the next year or so, that's what we're going to do. We want to do. We want to build a strong coalition of support around the bill, both from the community, the counties and municipalities, and then also the businesses.
Sounds good.
And there are a lot of problems, and we think this is the time for Tennessee to really be considering this, because we've got landfill problems.
Right.
We've got a number of landfills that are filling up, they're causing problems, and we need to do something different. We've got there are people who are looking at other solutions, such as waste to energy and things like that, that while the bill doesn't ban them, it doesn't encourage them, because it doesn't consider them to be recycling. And we would just as soon starve them of material, because by having all of the material, all of our waste going back and being reused into new products.
Bobby, you're the final, you can bring it up here, Bobby.
There was a question from Karen McIntyre. What's the basis of the chamber's opposition? Did Dan want to address that first? And then
at this time, we do not know their real basis at this point. We like to believe that it's just because they don't understand the benefits of it. Because again, in terms of our surveying, 2/3 of people don't know what EPR is. They've not been paying attention. And it's a complicated program. And so it takes education, and it takes time for people to understand.
Okay, then I want to just talk about a lot of Sierra Club members and other organizations were at the Conservation Education Day at the legislature on Wednesday. And although the TWRRA was kind of on the bottom of our list, because it's not a bill that was actually up for being voted on during this current legislative session, and it just got on the docket during almost coincidentally with the time that we were there on Wednesday. So the word isn't really out about it, even with the legislature. But I do think that Dan's plan of going around to every county and municipal mayor and solid waste manager all around the state, that's the way they can lobby TDEC and lobby their legislators on the value of the bill. And that's really my takeaway. So he's already got a good start on that, and that was the way to go. But as far as Sierra Club, talking about the bill at the current Conservation Education Day, we almost didn't.
Yeah, and that was a little bit by design, because once the opposition, at this point, we've introduced the bill. We introduced it not as a caption bill, but as actual real live bill, so everybody knows it's out there. But there's just not in this time for this seating, there's just not the time to build that support effectively. And so rather than bringing the bill up before committee and getting it voted down because people don't understand it, it's better to just take the approach of saying, hey, we're running our flag up the pole. We're here. You're going to see us, and we're going to come back with support.
Just to remind everybody, a legislative session goes 2 years. So it is something that takes it can
Right.
take, right. So we're at 1 o'clock, and I really appreciate that everyone put up with it looks like it's blown through Nashville, but I think anybody in East Tennessee, you're about to get it. I apologize. I heard it's going to be pretty bad there. You might already have it. So enjoy, Bobby and Dan. I know you all are in East Tennessee, so good luck. Thank you so much for presenting. We really appreciate it. And it was definitely a hot topic. So I really appreciate it.
And thank you for listening to me, and I hope we can all work together and build the support necessary to pass this bill.
Yeah, by the way, we have another person from Blount County out in East Tennessee who's about to get it. Marilyn Finley is also saying thank you. So thank you all East Tennesseans who've shown up as well. All right, everyone. I look forward to seeing you on April 7th. And again, I apologize for the rough start. And luckily, we're still here. We haven't been blown away. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next month. And Dan, thank you so much for presenting. That was fabulous. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.